July 28, 2023. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart on the NinjaTrader 8 platform. You can go down to the descriptions below to see where I took my trades as well as where I thought I saw setups. Everything is timestamped. Also, there was only one piece of economic data that came out that really moved the market. Actually, there are technically two. One was the core PCE price index, as well as the unemployment cost index, which came out at 5:30 Pacific Standard, which is about right here. You can tell the market didn't really quite react too much to it. And the second piece of economic data came out at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard, which is the revised University of Michigan or something consumer sentiment, which came out at around 7 o'clock, which is about right here. And as you can see, it also didn't really move the markets. So in the pre-market, it kind of was chopping and it rallied, not because of any economic news, it just kind of rallied. And I marked out the highs and the lows of the pre-market. And you could tell overall the price structure was kind of one big leg up, two, depending on how you drew it. I drew, well, even if you went even, and if you looked at it even closer, you could argue there are even more legs, but pretty much one big leg, a consolidation, a second leg, then a sell-off. Then I guess you could argue for two legs, but pretty much a consolidation. So I took a total of 4 trades today. I won 2 and lost 2. I'm going to get to that pretty quickly. Price action itself, I don't think it was that difficult. It was some waiting around, but overall there was kind of a cluster of trades that could have happened or could have been pretty good. But then like this big sell-off, I didn't really see a good place to enter, as well as this rally bounce here. So let me just go into the trades now. But as I said, in the pre-market, prices just kind of oscillated and jumped back up. And I was playing with multiple, this one's slightly off. I was playing multiple trend channels going up to see if I could get prices to kind of fit within my channel. And as you can see, it looked like for a while it was going up in this beige channel. So I actually connected it 1, 2, and 3 touches. I actually had it a little bit more sharp and had a slight overshoot here when I cut it up. But then when it touched this third time here, it looked like it placed pretty well at the top side as well. So I was essentially working off of this beige channel first, and then later this clear one comes into play. I'll point it out when we get there. So the first setup I saw was after the open, prices were just kind of chopping. EMA is pointing up. The first setup I saw was right about here. It makes a double top, but you see a new high, then first entry long, but it actually makes a double high. So you can count this as the new high, reset the count, makes a first entry long, then a second entry long. The second entry long, I didn't like it just because it wasn't a good signal bar. It closed below the EMA and is coming right into the top of this pre-market range, because in real time, you're not sure where prices are actually going to end up. So when you see this, you do have an overshoot here, and you would think it kind of hit the top of this trading range. It's probably going to fade back in, even though it's showing very bullish strength. So I wasn't sure. So since you're not sure, as I was, I decided to just sit on my hands and not risk it. Then prices continue moving up. So that trade would have worked, but it's hard to argue that that's a standard trade setup that I should always be taking, because next time it probably wouldn't work. Then I do see the next entry here. It's a new high here, first entry long, pulls back, creates a second entry long right here, potentially. So I saw a second entry long here. This is potentially a trade, but the thing was it broke down and it rallied back up. So it technically hasn't made the second entry long yet, but it is a good signal bar. It made 2 clean legs down. It's bouncing off this established channel, which is this beige one, because it already has 3 good touches now. 1, 2, 3. And technically that's the 4th touch, and the top side is touching and matching pretty well. So this entry I wasn't comfortable with, but I could see it as a potential entry as an aggressive trade if you put it 1 tick above. Plus it closed above the EMA. So my position was I was going to wait for a confirmation setup. So here it does makes a clean second entry long now. Here is where you get your higher low confirmation of the second entry long. This is actually where I also took my first trade. So I liked it because it confirms the second entry long. It also bounced off of this ascending channel. So I guess you could consider it a 5th touch, or in my case, I just considered a reinforcement of the 4th touch. It's a very strong bullish bar. I like that. And it looks like it created a trap for people thinking this is a failed second entry long, because you could do high here, first entry long, second entry long, technically when it opens and it flashes down, it creates a failure. So people that all went short here, where it got filled, and then it immediately reversed back up, and depending if you had your stop loss one tick above this guy, you would have gotten trapped, gotten a losing trade, and then this next candle flashes up. I was able to get out and it came back down, so it looked like it could be a double trap. Maybe it would go short, but by then I was already out of the trade. But I saw it as a failed second entry short coming up because there's a new low here, first entry short, and then a second entry short right here. So it's kind of an inside bar here, but it went one down, came down, and went right back up. So potentially there's a trade there, but I felt, I was already out of the trade. I wasn't going to look to try to scalp another trade in, but there was enough room for the top of this candle to get to the extreme here for a quick 1 point scalp. Then prices continue moving up, kind of chops around. It's kind of respecting the EMA. Again, it confirms this ascending channel, this bottom support line. I'm watching, I'm not taking any trades. It comes back down, creates a new high here. So if you counted this as a new high and you included this as a first entry long, you come down, it makes a second entry long here. I didn't though. I counted this as grouped together as one because you reset the count when it makes a double top. I counted this only as a first entry long. But depending on how you counted it, if you counted it as second entry long, there's potentially a trade there, but I felt it would have been aggressive because you don't know that this is going to be a support. It's only created a double touch so far. You don't have a third touch confirmation. So yes, it could have been a trade, but I just didn't feel it was safe enough and I wanted to wait for a higher low confirmation. Unfortunately, the higher low never shows up. It just kind of flashes up and it comes right back down. I mean, if you argue this was the higher low, it's too far from the trade now. It's almost starting a new setup, so you couldn't really count this as a higher low. I do see this as a new high here. It's a first entry long. It creates a second entry long here, but I considered it as one leg. So I counted this as one leg down, pulls up, second leg down, and this is where I actually created a second entry long. Even though technically per the count, this is your second entry long, you have a third entry long. But the second entry long here, it might have been a possible trade because it does confirm in this part in real time, but you'd have to be pretty confident that there's actually going to be a bullish move up. This is actually where I started to draw the larger channel going up, thinking potentially there was going to be something here because I had one touch, two touch, and this potentially made a third touch. Now I was playing with that in my mind, but I didn't really have it drawn because I didn't trust it yet. But it was just certainly there. And of course, when this flashes up, I felt like the trade, unless I was already in it and has super confidence that this is going to be a triple test, as well as this being another key entry point, this trade would have just kind of left without you. But it does create a higher low confirmation right here because it comes back, it makes a higher low, a little bit far to confirm this guy. But I want this higher low to actually close above the EMA. So technically it's a higher low, and I didn't like the way it's set up. Then the trigger bar closes, but it also closes right at the EMA. If it just closed a little bit above, even though you're a little bit late to the trade, I would have considered taking an entry because there's enough room to scalp to the top. But since it's just kind of formed right at the EMA itself is flattening out, I felt it was kind of a risky entry to try to take, so I left it alone. Of course, things like that happen, and when I left it alone, of course, it would have worked out. But I try not to let those uh, catch up on me or affect me because I don't want to make a bad decision next time thinking, well, I missed it last time, I'm going to try it this time. And of course, that next time it will fail and I would have lost the trade. So stuff like that, just kind of have to let it go. Prices then continue chopping up. I draw this shortened trend channel going up. I like the one touch, two touch, three touch, and it fits pretty nicely at the top here. Confirms there, comes back, and I saw this as a new high, first entry long, second entry long. Now, this second entry long, it looks fantastic because it had two clean legs down and moved up. However, it looks fantastic now, but in real time, if I saw this in real time, I think I would have taken it. I'm pretty confident I would have taken it because there's enough room to the top, enough for a scalp. The reason I didn't take it is I had to reload the historical data, and in real time, this green candle was actually bearish, and then this candle was slightly different, kind of showing a big bullish candle. So at the time, this would have looked like a terrible signal bar, and I wouldn't have taken the trade, which I didn't. But then when I reloaded the data, which I try to do about every hour to every hour and a half, the market's slow, just because things like that does happen where the candles don't print, or maybe the price action, they rolled it over to this candle as opposed to the candle before or whatnot. But Unfortunately, it's a shame that this didn't look quite clean enough when I saw it in real time. Otherwise, it would have been a phenomenal trade, a very clean trade too. Then I also saw this setup as a new high, first entry long, second entry long. But I also saw it as a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. And on this second entry long, it fails right on this candle, right? Because it's one push up, second push up, failure. Also, it's confirmed the second entry short right here. But these two candles are too doji-ish. I didn't like the way they looked, so it felt risky to try to jump on this. And even though it's flashed down, to think that you're going to try to enter here now, it felt a little bit dicey. Reason being is it looks like it's clearly in a trading range. This is the first break of this ascending channel. So it's the first break, made one attempt to push up, pulls back, and I'm thinking if I decide to go short, because a failed second entry long is telling you should go short, second entry short itself is telling you to go short, but overall context is saying it only pushed down once. It could try to attempt to push down a second time. You could argue that this is the second attempt, but I didn't quite see it that way. So I was concerned that it could bounce. This could be a failed breakout, and prices could move all the way back in. So I didn't want to take that trade. I wasn't sure, didn't have enough context, so I left it alone. And then prices did fly downward, so the trade itself would have worked out, but it's hard to say you would have gotten filled because you can tell there's a gap here. So even if you had one tick below, it's hard to say that you'd get filled. So this is just kind of one of those tricky situations that I didn't get to trade, but that's okay. Prices continue moving up. This is where I saw a new low here, first entry short, second entry short, and on this candle it fails. So in my thinking at the time, I said, okay, so obviously it failed the second entry short. It's a this is technically where the failure occurred. I counted this as the signal bar. When it flashed up and it was bouncing around, I entered right here. I'm thinking, okay, it pulled down. It's probably going to try to attempt to test this high. Also had this channel, but then I also drew this wider one. I said it broke out, pushed up once. It might try to test the recent highs here as well. So I entered, and unfortunately, immediately on the next candle bar, it stopped me out. So that was my second trade, and it was a red trade. Then prices continue moving. I saw this a new high, first entry long, second entry long. And as you can already tell, I saw the second entry long. I gave it another shot to go long because at this point I saw this ascending channel being confirmed one time, two time, three time, four time. This is potentially the fifth time. I was thinking there might be enough strength at least to go back up. I was clearly wrong because I entered one tick above the original signal bar, which is this red one. And actually not one tick, I actually tried to move it back to right where the high was. Flashed up immediately on the same candle that it entered, it stops me out. So this is the third trade and it was also red. So that made me take pause. I was thinking, okay, I got first trade green, two subsequent trades red. I need to slow down, calm down before I guess, fall into a bad habit of revenge trading and try to get these two back because this is a little bit choppy now. So obviously I read the market and the price action incorrectly. I need to just step back for a bit. So I just try to stay stay rational and try to see things as they were instead of trying to get the trade back immediately. It was admittedly very difficult, but then prices continue chopping down. I said, well, clearly I don't know what's going on yet. Wait for a more clear setup. So prices keep chopping down. There's no clear second entries that I like or that I thought were high probability, and I just had to sit in my hands, even though these two trades pretty much wiped out my profit and put me in the red. I just had to wait. Then prices continue. They started moving up. It moved really tightly up. It broke out. Looks like it was consolidating. It made one push up, already tested the high. Second push up clearly already exceeded and tested the high. Then it's chopping around. I'm thinking this is one leg up. Potentially there's a second leg up after this consolidation. This consolidation looks like it's creating a trading range. Comes back down. This is actually where I take my fourth and last trade. Now, I actually made a mistake. I entered earlier than I had anticipated because I dropped in my order. Something I usually do is something like this. No, actually, market's closed. But let's say I drop my order and you can actually drag it and move the price, move the trade wherever you wanted to. And I actually dragged it up to here. I was waiting for this candle to break above this one to confirm the first entry long, second entry long, but I accidentally let my mouse click go. Actually, I dropped it here by accident and it got filled. But I also liked that this setup was potentially a second entry long, but it hasn't actually formed yet, but it was also a failed breakout. And I was supposed to just keep holding on to the trade, but it filled. And I was very lucky when it filled. It flashed back, closed actually on the low, and I thought, okay, I'm definitely going to get stopped out, lose this trade. But on this next candle, it flashes back into the trading range and immediately lets me get my core profit. And I was just holding on to a runner at this point. I just held the runner all the way up to here. When it was flashing up and down, I did have my runner actually stop here. And as this was having trouble, I was afraid it was going to be another failed breakout. I dragged my runner up and I was able to get my runner pretty nice and close to the top of the trading range. Then prices continued chopping up. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to ride this up further, but that's okay. Considering this was off of a mistake trade, I was just happy that it was profitable because I definitely let the trade go early. I should have entered actually on this green candle after the confirmation of the second entry long, but as I said, this actually hasn't confirmed the second entry long yet. It did confirm the failed breakout on this candle. So overall, this was kind of like I nerfed this trade, but I was fortunate that it actually worked out in my favor. So definitely, it's a lesson learned just to be more careful on my timing as well as how I'm operating inside the platform. Then prices continue chopping around. It looks like it's not really giving you any good setups. Kind of flashes down a little bit, chops around, and it's kind of goes into the close now. This is only the last 10 minutes. There's all this price action, but it's very risky. This is where traders are closing out the positions and just kind of calling it day. Also closing out the month because today is the last trading day of July. So there's probably some volatility in terms of people and big institutions moving money in and out just so their month of July looks good, or they're just cutting their losers or reinvesting for their winners. So it was a little bit choppy toward the end. And let's see, yeah. So then on Monday, it'll be a new month and a new trading. So it's pretty much how I saw the charts today. Took 4 trades, 2 green, 2 red. Admittedly, the last trade was a little bit, it was kind of a mistake, but it worked in my favor. So I'm not going to attribute that to any real good skill, but it's just more dumb luck in that instance. So hopefully that was helpful.